Hello and welcome to English 9. This is Teacher Doris, inviting you to join me in learning another lesson in English. First, we will see the objectives in today's lesson. In today's lesson, you are expected to first, differentiate active voice from passive voice. Second, appreciate the importance of the passive voice structure. And third, transform sentences from active voice to passive voice. What is active? What is passive? What is voice? Voice refers to the who or what that is doing the verb's action in a sentence. When we say active voice, it means the subject is doing the action. So this is the structure of an active voice. We have the subject, the verb, plus the object. When we say passive voice, the subject is receiving the action. So this is the structure of a passive voice. We have object plus HV or helping verb plus V3 or the third form of the verb plus by and then the subject. Let's take a look at an example of the voices. Example, active voice, teacher makes a mojo. So we have an active subject here, and the subject is the teacher, the verb is makes, and the object is a mojo. In the passive voice, we have a mojo is made by the teacher. So we have a passive subject. The structure of the passive voice is we have the object plus the helping verb plus V3 plus by and then the subject. In the examples, take note of the following transformation. First, the object in the active voice becomes the subject in the passive voice. Second, the verb in the active voice becomes a verb phrase composed of the appropriate form of the verb and the past participle of the main verb. Third, the subject in the active voice becomes the object of the by phrase in the passive voice. Most writers prefer to use active voice because it gives more direct, stronger, and more concise sentences. On the other hand, there are cases where you need to resort in using the passive voice. Now, why is it important to learn the passive voice? Consider the following cases. First, the doer of the action is unknown or insignificant in the sentence. Example, the store was robbed last night. Who robbed the store? We don't know. Next, the action is more important rather than the doer. Example, sharing makes things lighter. Here, in this case, the action sharing is given more emphasis than the doer. Third case, the receiver is more important than the doer. Example, the locally stranded individuals, or LSI, were relieved after being sent back home. In this case, the receiver of the action is given more emphasis. Next case, the sentence talks about general truth. Example, the earth revolves around the sun. Okay, and everyone knows this information. So there you have it, the reasons why we need to learn how to use passive voice sentences. We will now go to the steps transforming active voice to passive voice. Steps in transforming active voice to passive voice. So transforming active voice to passive voice. Example, active voice. COVID-19 affected the whole world. COVID-19 is the subject, affected is the verb, the whole world is the object. Passive voice. The whole world was affected by COVID-19. The whole world is the object, was affected, the be plus past participle or the V3 then by the subject. So the sentences have the same meaning, but the context is different or changes. In the first sentence, we are giving more importance to the subject, and the subject is the one performing the action. In the second sentence, we are giving more importance to the object and the action performed by the subject rather than subject itself. Usually, we use the active voice only. But before we proceed, here are the things that we need to remember in transforming active voice to passive voice. First, when changing the subject, which is a pronoun, to object, I becomes me, he becomes him, she becomes her, we becomes us, they becomes them. Next thing to remember, we need to add a proper helping verb of to be before the main verb. The helping verb depends on the tenses of the main verbs used in a sentence. So the helping verbs are as follows: be, is, are, was, were, been, and being. Now let's go to the steps. And here are the steps in transforming active voice to passive voice. First, we need to identify the subject, the verb, and the object. Second step, we need to swap the subject and the object's location or position in the sentence. Third, we need to convert the verb or the main verb to its third form. Fourth step, we need to add the proper helping verb before the main verb. And the last and the final step in transforming active voice to passive voice is we need to add the preposition by before the subject. So the structure now of the passive voice is we have the object plus HB plus B3 plus by, and then the subject. Now let's take a look on how to transform the first 8 tenses in the English language following the given steps.
We will transform the simple present tense first.
Okay, example, he writes a letter. First step, we need to identify the subject, the verb, and the object. So the subject here is he, the verb is write, the object is a letter. Next step is to swap the object and the subject's position in the sentence. So we will write a letter and then him. As you can see, the pronoun he in the active voice becomes him in the passive voice. Now, let's go to the third step, which is to convert the main verb to the third form or the V3. So, we'll get the base form of the verb write is write, and then wrote, and then written. So, we will put the word written. So we now have a letter written him. So it doesn't make sense. So let's move on to the fourth step, which is to add the proper helping verb. So the verb tense depends on the tense used in the active voice, and it depends also on the form of the new subject, which is in this case, the new subject is a letter. So we will use the helping verb is. We now have a letter is written him. So it doesn't make sense still. So it's time to move on to the fifth and final step, which is to add the preposition by before the subject. So there you have it. Our passive voice is a letter is written by him. For the following tenses, please refer to the table. Now let's practice. You can pause this video if you need more time doing the transformation. Let us now check your answer. So here are the answers. Okay, from Walter invests the money in a liquor store becomes the money in a liquor store is invested by Walter. Next, the children have planned the project where to spend the money. Okay, so the project where to spend the money has been planned by the children. Number 3, Benita will use the money for medical schooling. We now have the money for medical schooling will be used by Benita. Number 4, Asagay taught Benita about his African heritage. Okay, so Benita was taught by Asagay about his African heritage. Number 5, the younger family are planning their individual dreams. Okay, so we now have their individual dreams are being planned by the younger family. I hope you have learned something today. Again, this is Teacher Doris. Thank you and happy learning. See you.